Hello. Hi, everybody. Let me just make sure that my camera is in the right place here, and then we can get started. I'm excited. I'm working at my desk today, so it looks a little bit different. What's going on here? Sorry, y'all. Today, this week actually has been another one of those weeks that are full of technical problems for me. First and foremost being this was supposed to be a pre-recorded video, right? This was going to be a pre-recorded video. I was going to upload it to YouTube and use that really cool Premiere feature that they have. Unfortunately, pre-recording videos is a little out of my wheelhouse. Let's say that, and so I don't dissolve into a fit of rage right now. As you guys know, I love technology and also struggle super hard with technology. I don't know how those two things happened in one person at the same time, but they did. So today, what I am doing is reviewing Becoming Dangerous. Of course, I forgot to bring up my review. I'm so glad you guys can't see all the other times that I tried to record this video and got it all ready, said my whole spiel, and then looked at the camera and realized it stopped recording a minute in. Pretty funny. Also, I'm just trying to waste time so that other people can get here. I started a little bit early, just to make sure that everything would work. Do I have anybody yet? I'm not sure. 3. Excellent. Okay, so there's 3 of you here. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to get started. So I have so many witchy books now. I have this humongous list of books that I either have read and have not reviewed, or that I have not read yet. And it's really hard to pick one to focus on. So I decided to ask you guys what it is you want me to review next, what book you guys are interested in. And I gave you the choice between 2. The first being Becoming Dangerous by 21 different authors, or the big book of Practical Spells by Judica Isles. You guys chose Becoming Dangerous, and not only on Facebook, but also on Twitter. So everybody wants to read Becoming Dangerous. I'm very excited to be able to review it for you. I thought this would be a little bit more fun than just posting it onto the website, though you will be able to find the fully written out review at thefatfeministwitch.com. I believe it's scheduled to go up as soon as it's, as soon as our video is done. Susie, I have always had issues with technology. I think my energy interferes with it. I love to think that this is the reason. Because I truly do love technology. I love working at my computer. I love the internet. I love social media. Sometimes I'm just as excited to talk about all of the work that I do in social media or doing the little graphic design. Sometimes I'm just as excited about that stuff as I am about the witchy stuff. But yes, I struggle a little bit. Though I believe part of the reason I struggle is because I try to rush myself through it and I have to slow down. But for now, I'm going to hurry up and get to this review. And I've got it right here. So, Becoming Dangerous. 21 different authors. There are 21 nonfiction essays that all surround these different authors using ritual as a way to harness their personal power. A lot of the people in the book identify as witches, but not all of them. Some of them no longer identify as witches, but when they were younger or in times of stress, they found power in reaching out to the witch archetype and embodying it. Because there are 21 different stories written by 21 different people, you might find that not every single story in here applies to you or appeals to you or is totally relatable. And that's okay. I felt that, but there was not a single story in here that I skipped or that I outright disliked. I liked all of them. All of them. There were, of course, a few that I liked the most, and I am going to talk about 3 different stories in here that I really, really enjoyed the most, especially. So I found it to be incredibly cool, engaging, inspirational, and it very much earned its 5 crystal ball rating. So if you were thinking of buying Becoming Dangerous or getting it from your library or your local witchy shop, I highly recommend. So right away, as you can see up here in that corner, the book features a foreword by Kristen J. Soleil, who wrote, oh, thank you, Rhonda. Oh, I love having new listeners. It's so weird to think of someone listening to the old episodes now, though. I just get like this little, oh no. Oh no, how did I sound 3 years ago? That's so fun. So the foreword right away by Kristen J. Soleil, who wrote Witches, Sluts, Feminist, which, as you guys know, is like one of my faves from the last few years. Her foreword laid out the modus operandi of becoming dangerous, and that is resistance. This book is all about resistance. Resisting the status quo, resisting an unfair government, resisting all of the things that people tell us we need to be versus choosing for ourselves. So this is a big badass book of resistance as far as I'm concerned. And Kristen's a really great writer, and so I was all fired up and so super excited to get in there and dive into one of the stories, and then I turned the page and found something really cool that distracted me for a little while. So right here you can find, right here in the beginning, page XX 20, I guess, content warnings. It talks a little bit about what content warnings are and why they chose to put them in the book. And then it gives you content warnings for various different stories within the book. Not every single one, because you don't all need it, but what the content warnings are is they just give you a heads up about some of the difficult topics you might find in some of these essays. They're very personal, they're nonfiction, and a lot of them deal with trauma or marginalization. So for example, my favorite story was Undressing My Heart, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And the content warnings for that one are discussions of war and sex. In another one I'm going to talk about, Where Is It? Discussions of depression, explicit discussions of rape, abuse, self-injury, dissociation, PTSD in a different one, discussions of colonialism and war or racism or medical procedures. So the content warnings are amazing. But right in the little intro, it tells you that these are not to make you avoid any of the stories in the book, unless you absolutely have to or want to, of course. But what I found is this didn't make me outright avoid any stories. It just got me a little bit prepared so that going in, it's like, okay, I'm going to be reading a story right now about war. I need to get into a place where I'm not going to cry the first time it comes up. And I was able to get through all stories. Like I said, I liked all 21 of them. So I thought that was very, very interesting and very considerate, considering, the same people who wrote this book are the people who are going to be reading this book. People who've seen some shit and been through some things. So I thought that was very interesting. Just making sure I can see your comments. I'm checking them on my computer. Just a heads up. So we have our content warnings. And that distracted me for a little while because I thought it was very cool. But I still dove into all the stories. I did not read them in order. I read them in a totally random order, choosing whatever it is I felt like. Sometimes I looked at the content warnings and saw, what would I like to read about today? What do I feel like I need to read about today? And otherwise, I just kind of picked and choose. So my favorite one in the whole book was Undressing My Heart by Gabriella Herstick. Now, I follow Gabriella Herstick on Twitter and Instagram because she is a super interesting, wonderful, witchy person. She is an Aquarius, and she is so Aquarius. She's artistic, and she's really bold, and she's very fashionable. And I don't mean that she follows fashionable trends. She decides what is fashionable for her, and she fucking rocks it. So I was excited to see a story of hers in here, and it ended up being my favorite one in the whole book. Now, this book, the content warnings tell you that there are discussions of war and sex in there, so just a heads up. And I'm going to mention a war quite quickly. So in it, she writes about her relationship with fashion, with clothes, with self-expression, and how that connects to her magic, her ritual, her witchcraft, and her ancestral lineage. Earlier in the story, it talks about her paternal grandparents and how they met. So Grandpa Harry and Grandma Rose, they were both training for the Israeli Defense League, and Harry let Rose know that her fly was open. And those are the first words he said to his future wife. And they both worked in clothes and with fabric. Rose was a seamstress, and Harry was a master weaver. And they were both Jewish, and when they both got shipped off to camps, Rose's talent with clothes actually saved her life. The head seamstress at Auschwitz had a daughter named Rose. And so she took a liking to her and invited her to live into the house. Well, not invited, but, right? She got to live in their residence versus in the camp. It saved her life. She was able to make uniforms for Nazi soldiers, and it helped her survive. It kept her alive. And in it, she mentions multiple times, the author, mentions multiple times that it's not lost on her that without clothes, without sewing, without working with fabric and textiles like this, she might not exist. Rose might not have survived. Harry and Rose might never have met over that oaken fly. And right away, it gave me such a strong feeling of, oh yeah, that's no wonder clothes are so special and important. Sometimes fashion can sound frivolous. I don't think so. Of course, I love it, but sometimes fashion can seem very frivolous. You know, you're only dealing with what's on the outside. And this story made it clear that fashion can be a lot about what's going on the inside. So those were her paternal grandparents, right? Her maternal family is from Mexico City. This is a culture with lots of bright, bold colors. Oh, lovely. And as she says, it's also a culture of arched brows, which made me laugh, but is so true. Oh my God. Man, I gotta get my eyebrows done. It keeps reminding me that I gotta get them done. But bright colors, bold looks, and arched brows, I am all about that. So in working with fashion and with the way that she expresses herself through clothes, it helped her connect to both of these ancestral lines of her, to these parts of her identity, and to these people that mean something to her. And it allowed her to weave that magic into her own life, and of course turn it into something that is specific and unique to her. Something that really made me gasp out loud, and it's maybe the reason why this story was my favorite, is she mentions that at 18, she started a lingerie collection with a vintage piece that she found. And then she started taking photos of herself wearing it, and she loved that feeling of comfort and sensuality and power that she got from wearing clothes like that. And I super relate, because in high school, I did find a piece of lingerie, a top, at a thrift store that happened to be my size, which is so unusual. I was pretty much this size, maybe a little bit skinnier in the belly like everyone else, but I was already this size in high school. So finding a piece of lingerie that fit was unheard of. And I actually ended up wearing it to school underneath, blouses and blazers and things. And it was such a extreme kind of look for me, because I had never been so in touch with my sexuality or sensuality. It just felt very powerful and very comfortable, and it felt like it sent a really cool message about myself and about how I felt about myself. And so when I read that she had had that similar experience, and that now she uses lingerie both in her witchcraft and in her regular life to bring up different emotions and energies like that, I so related. I actually had kind of forgotten that I did that. Every now and then I'll think about it, but for the most part I kind of forgot the experience of buying the lingerie and why I actually purchased it, even though it was at a Value Village, a thrift store. And this just reminded me about the kind of power that made me feel. I love dressing with intention and working magic into your ritual of getting ready every day, whether you do that with makeup and dresses and high-priced fabrics, or whether that's just with your regular comfortable cotton clothes like I'm wearing right now. They look pretty, but comfy cotton every day. I love working intention into that, and it was really, really interesting to see how much of an influence that could have on somebody who was already interested in witchcraft and spirituality, how much that can blend in and how much energy that can draw into her life and into her practice. So that was my favorite one, Undressing My Heart by Gabriella Herstick. Of course, all of this will be on my website, fatfeministwitch.com, so I linked to Gabriella's website. I put a picture of her up. All of the authors I talk about, I put their picture and I put a link to their website so that you guys can find them as well. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. So, another one that I truly, truly loved was I Am Myself, a Bottle of Water by Lee Alexander. And I actually read this one while I was sitting at the beach. I was sitting on the sand, I was all wet from the lake, and I was watching the lake because, oh my God, the beach. And I was sitting on the beach and really immersed in the water, so when I opened this up to read and I saw that story, I decided to jump right to it. right away, I realized that this author has to be around my age because she talks about The Little Mermaid being a very important film of the time. And wanting to be a witch, designing a spell to try to become mermaids and return to the sea and never have to go home or to school again. And that is just, that is a 90s witch aesthetic I really relate to. I was there. I was definitely there for that. So what the story does is chronicles her relationship with the ocean, sea, with water, and with herself. And her body. She describes multiple times that she didn't feel like she fit in with other kids. She was Jewish, she was black, her dad was the only black guy at her bat mitzvah, right, at the synagogue. And describes her body being larger than other kids or looking different than other kids. But when they were in the ocean, when they're on the beach, when they're in the water, when they're all floating there together, the ocean would heal those differences or even just make them obsolete. One line I really liked in that one was, "If I felt too large, the sea made me weightless." And as a chubby, water-loving kid, I so related to that sentence. Like, it was such a short little sentence, but I read it over and over and over because it's truly like that. I remember being a kid and, you know, we're all in swimming lessons at one time and we can all float. It doesn't matter that I'm heavier than all those other kids or that I'm bigger than all those other kids or that my butt is fatter so I have to really tuck it in. We can all float there in the water because the water can hold all of us because we're all the same. And that's a very powerful feeling, right? And much like Undressing My Heart, this book, or this story, highlights the sea and its connection to her ancestral lineage. At one point, she tells that her grandfather or her uncle made a joke that her family went through all of the danger and the trouble to cross the Atlantic to end up on the shore of Massachusetts and decided to just stay there because it was easiest. They were sick of traveling. But of course, when it comes to the sea, the ocean, that is not a soft, fluffy kind of place to live or kind of element. It is a very chaotic and deep and challenging element to work with or to live near. Any one of you who lives on the water or near the sea can no doubt relate to that. It can be a difficult place to live, but it is worth it because that connection to the sea is so vital. She describes that even as people drift in and out of her life, like her best friend that she tried to cast a spell with to become a mermaid as a small child, even as they drift in and out of her life, the sea is her constant friend. And anywhere in the world she goes, it doesn't matter what ocean or sea or body of water she's looking at, she knows she can go to the water and she can connect to that energy, to that feeling of home, to that feeling of power and of herself, her inner self. I loved it. She was really funny. She told tons of really funny jokes all the way through, but it was also very deep and personal and emotional. And I'm not going to lie, I totally cried on the beach. Like right there was people everywhere. But I definitely cried on the beach while reading it because it was very lovely. Just making sure everything's still working. I keep having to make sure because you never know. Okay, so the last one I'm going to talk about is actually the first story that I read in the book. So after reading the page on the content warnings, I looked through them and saw if there was any that I thought, I could handle. Let's start there. And this first one, content warnings, discussions of depression. I'm like, well, I've got depression. I already know what that's like. Let's dive in. It was called Reddit, Retin A, and Resistance, an Alchemist's Guide to Skincare. And this one was really interesting. It's by Sam Maggs. So this one combined the storytelling nature I loved about the previous two stories I mentioned with practical advice and information and like a little bit of encyclopedic style information about skincare and about these little potions that she uses. So the author uses a K-beauty facial skincare type system. And that's actually not my style. I'm not into that many products or that many rules because I don't like rules. But I still loved it and found it very, very interesting because it's something that she does specifically for herself, to care for herself. And in this world where, everyone, but women especially are expected to put everyone before themselves, put everyone's needs before their own, and just not really care for themselves, care for everyone else. Taking a lot of time every day solely to focus on yourself and care for yourself is kind of a powerful act of resistance. I loved the way she described her skincare regimen. She describes putting all of her little bottles of potions up in the right order so that she can put them on her face to complete the spell. And every time she puts one of her products on her face and works it in, she says an intention. She puts her intention into that product to help strengthen herself and help her feel confident and help her feel connected to herself. And I really did love that because I really only use like one little facial oil for a moisturizer, but I really do like think of it when I'm rubbing it in my hands before I put it on. I really do think of an intention that kind of matches the vibe of the oil, and it really does feel like a little potion bottle. So that was a really fun story that made me feel a little less bad for how much time I spend, washing my face at the end of the day, just caring for myself, and how powerful caring for yourself can really be. Really fun. So, like I said, I did not find a single one of these essays that I outright disliked. Not one. I enjoyed reading every single one. And even some where the subject matter, wasn't super relatable to me. It's not my thing. I still enjoyed reading it because the writing of each author and the way they express themselves, it's just absolutely captivating. This is a collection of writing by 21 incredibly talented writers with a great talent for drawing you into their life and feeling like you were there. Really, really good. Another story that gets special mention is Red Glitter, and it's by Sophie St. Thomas, again, whom I adore. She does a lot of writing about sex and about drugs and using psychoactive compounds. So she recently wrote about her experiences using ketamine to treat PTSD and anxiety. Super interesting. But in her story, Red Glitter, content warnings, discussions of sex and non-blood bodily fluids, it began with the most perfect line that has ever begun any single story, and I know that as soon as I say it, you're going to be like, I need to find out more. So her story, Red Glitter, begins with the line, I chose the Frankencock. That's the sentence. I keep saying it to myself and giggling all the time because I'm a baby, but it was that story in general was fun, but I can't tell you more than the first line because I need you to just think about that line for a long time until you finally get a chance to read the story. Because I think that's the best way to experience it. Frankencock. So good. So, even though this is not a practical book of spellcraft or how to work magic as a witch, I found the things that I read in the book creeping into my practice and creeping into my everyday life. I've definitely been thinking a little bit more about dressing with intention since I read Undressing My Heart. When it gets all hot in the summer, sometimes I let that go. I bail on it because it's just so hot. My outfit's going to get ruined and sweaty anyways. But it's not about that. It's not about how I actually look when I go out there. It's how I feel about myself when I'm dressed. So I've been paying more attention to that. There were a few topics that I looked up because I didn't know a lot about them before. In general, I found it very inspirational and funny and just a really great read. I particularly think this book is really great for any sort of time when you're on vacation or a day at the beach or something. Labor Day weekend is coming up. I don't know if you guys all have that here in Canada, yeah, Labor Day. And it's a long weekend before the beginning of fall. This is an awesome book for a weekend like that because you can pop in, read an entire story from beginning to end, and it doesn't take up your entire vacation. You can also look through and find exactly what kind of content you really, really feel like you need at this time. If you want to read a story about just specifically from the perspective of a Black woman or a queer person or a witch of color or a sex-positive witch, you can find all of that in here. So I think it's really, really great for that in general. I loved it. 5 crystal balls out of 5. And I'm glad you guys chose it. Okay. Now, I have another little thing to show you. So if you guys have any questions about Becoming Dangerous or about book reviews in general, please feel free to shoot me your little comments. Likewise, if you've read it and you liked it, or hated it, I guess, but I don't think any of you would have hated it. It's pretty good. If you liked it and want to share something that you read in the book that was very memorable for you, please feel free. By the way, I don't know if you guys can hear the music, but all of the songs you can hear in the background, if you can, are by Brooklyn. And I will be posting a link to the small playlist that just features her songs that I have playing right now. She is a witchy musician that makes witchy songs that are really good pop jams. I just dig them so hard. Cool. Okay, so before I get going, now you guys chose between Becoming Dangerous and another book called The Big Book of Practical Spells by Judika Iles. This book. Even though you didn't choose it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it because this is also a 5 crystal ball book. I absolutely adore this book. I adore Judika Iles in general. I love any books that she writes that contain spells, especially because they're so wonderful and the content is so varied. You find magic spells all in one book that work for people that practice in all different ways. Some spells you can see are hoodoo inspired, like there's recipes for Marie Laveau water and Florida water. And then there are others that are a little bit more Wiccan inspired, stuff you might have read if you enjoyed Scott Cunningham or Raymond Buckland back in the day. There are baths, pillows, all sorts of incredible activities, magic to help you communicate with spirits or to use during mediumship and seances, tea recipes, and the whole first half of the book is, honestly, even just the first half of the book is something I would recommend to anyone who is new or who is re-entering or reigniting an interest in witchcraft after a long time. Because it has a wonderful amount of information about some kinds of basics, like earth magic, communicating with the earth, the psychic glossary, the elements, different supplies and what they're used for, animal allies and spirit land, minerals and metals, botanicals, dreams. And it does talk about different cultures that have been, incorporated or synthesized into a lot of different modern witchcraft practices, which makes the book so great. It's so great for anyone, especially because anytime one of those is included, you get a little background. Where did this come from? What is this about? Who is Marie Laveau? So the book does not shy away from genuine information. And it's because Judika's amazing. She's I'm such a weird little fangirl. She also the author of Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells, the really big one. So cool. 5 crystal balls out of 5. You guys will also find a full review of this on my website, The Fat Feminist Witch, later today, after the one for Becoming Dangerous comes out. So I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you want to get into spellcraft. These are spells that nothing in there is impossible to find, even the ones that have a lot of ingredients. Nothing's impossible to find. Most of the spells in here could totally be used or applied in my own life. Truly fantastic book. And I wanted to pick one that was practical and one that was more storytelling. So I'm glad I got to share a little bit about both. Okay, here we go. Well, that was pretty much everything I had for you guys today. So I'm going to get going in a minute. But I will be putting up another poll coming up this weekend for between 2 books that you guys would like to have a review of next. I might do this video thing and do them live again, or I may just post them onto the website. I, of course, will let you know. So if you have any books that you want to request a review for or that you think that I would love, please feel free to share them. You can share them in the comments here. You can send them to my email at fatfeministwitch@gmail.com. You can go to my website, fatfeministwitch.com, and share it anywhere there, or find me across all social media. I am everywhere. I especially love Twitter and Facebook here. They're the easiest for conversing, right? You can really talk to people. Okay, So I hope you all have a really fantastic weekend, and I hope that really cool, artistic, and alien Aquarius full moon yesterday really infused some interesting energy into your day and into the rest of your weekend. Bye, everybody.